Wu-Sabat, as we say in our language, and welcome to another 3 questions. Remember that you can send in your 3 questions by recording yourself. You can use your phone, ask 3 questions that you would like answers for, and once you're happy with your recordings, you can just upload them to osmvision.wetransfer.com. all right, and then we'll get those answered for you. You know, without you, we won't be able to do this. So we need your questions. And I know many people have those burning questions that run through their mind, and they haven't had the opportunity for anyone to be able to answer those questions. And here at OSM Vision, Ask Us Anything, you know, we're here to help and answer your questions for you. All right, so let's get into today's questions. My name is Saken, and the first question of the 3 is...
Greetings and Wu-Sabat. I have 3 questions. The first one, with historical records suggesting that European and Western powers have systematically hoarded and possibly depleted gold reserves, including the mystery surrounding Fort Knox, could this indicate that gold is being extracted for the purposes beyond public knowledge and potentially linked to advanced civilizations or extraterrestrial influences? Number 2.
Okay, before we go on to number 2, that first question, yes, brother, you're so on point. See, what it is with anything that is scarce, the value goes up because, you know, humans on this planet, you know, with capitalism and materialism, everybody wants to be unique in the sense that, you know, it's about me, myself, and I. So when you look at the whole situation with gold, you find that the value goes up the more scarce it is. So what my brother's asking is such an important question, because you have to go back to the origins of who decides what is valuable and what is not. It's a bit like today, you know, Bitcoin is very valuable because it's scarce. And ironically, you know, the American government was saying on the news the other day with Trump saying that, you know, they've actually confiscated a lot of gold and, a lot of Bitcoin, and, you know, through all kinds of people that may be, you know, they'll call it, I don't know, money laundering and things like that. But anyway, and that Bitcoin is going to be kept as an asset, and it's going to be obviously worth a lot as it becomes more and more scarce. So when we're talking about gold, because that's again another asset that people are looking to, I guess, keep in terms of its value. Now, when we talk about gold, we go back to, there are different types of gold, by the way, or different forms of gold. And when you go back to like the biblical stories and this whole situation with the Anunnaki, because biblical stories, as in the monotheistic religions, are taken from the Anunnaki stories of the Sumerians, right? And if you start to research, or even that in itself, going back to the story of, you know, what took place on Risk, because remember that Risk had 3 sons, or has 3 sons, and the planet, at one point, all the 3 sons would basically be focused on a particular direction. And much like what's happening here on the planet, what was happening is that the ozone layer was depleting, which meant that the beings will be harmed if those harmful rays from 3 suns came through. And when that happened, they had to evacuate. And the way, or the solution that they came up with, was to find gold. The reason is because gold is a material that can be made as thin as paper, right? And then it could be then stretched and used to protect the planet. And that's what the mission was, to find gold. And in the mission, looking across the universe to find gold, this incident of Nibiru with the crash into Meldic, and then incidentally bumping into what we call Tamat at the time, which is known as planet Earth today, that gold was discovered. Because if you look at the asteroid belt, which was a part of this planet before that accident took place, they were then like, oh, the very substance that we're looking for is actually on this planet. And this is why the mission to come here and mine the gold. And incidentally, you hear of people like Elon Musk today trying to go and mine the asteroid belt. And so the Anunnaki came here and they set up shop and they started to try to extract the gold. However, the atmosphere was very dense, and so they found the work difficult. And this is how it led to them creating a worker, okay, known as Abd, or a slave. And this is where you get the word Abdullah, right? And in Islam today, they say servant of Allah. But that also ties into Muhammad's father's name. But anyway, so Enki was responsible, and they decided that they're going to create a being called a primitive worker who's going to mine the gold for them, because conflict arose between the two brothers, Enlil and Enki, because the Anunnaki were complaining that the work was too tedious and too hard for them. So they came up with a solution to create a being known as Lulu Amilu, which is referring to primitive worker. They refer to their mission and coming here as, and they call this place Iridu. Iridu means home away from home, because they started to replicate their home here. And then they started to mine the gold, and the gold was then being transported by cylinder craft ships to be taken back to Nibiru. And then, as the story goes, Enki obviously started to wear the gold, and, you know, it was shiny gold, and people were respecting him for that. And then that kind of led to what you're calling the gold standard of more recent times, and why gold is valuable. But the same thing is happening again. As they say, history has a way of repeating itself. And so our ozone layer now is also being depleted, mainly by the, you know, the like aerosol sprays and things like that. And there were big gaping holes in the area of what we would call Australia. So yes, once again, gold has suddenly been becoming more and more. So the fiat currency eventually replaced the gold. So before, you know, when the gold standard was being used, it was like you would value things by gold. But some of these, what we call them principalities in higher places, or the beings in the higher echelon of society, they know about certain secrets. They know that with the coming in of the sun cycle, more and more sun rays are going to come through. So they're also now trying to utilize that same principle of, you know, what the Anunnaki were doing to take the gold. And so gold was being deposited into banks, and then, as my brother mentioned, so sort of disappears. And now, because you've been given this fiat system, which is really based on worthless paper, yeah, so the point is the gold, you don't actually see gold anymore. And there's a little part of an update that I want to read that deals with this question. Such a great question. But yeah, try and see if you can, you know, you hear that phrase, show me the money? Well, you should be saying, show me the gold. Of course, there are other parts of the world and places where people have kept or stored some gold, and that it's not been taken, or people that hid large sums of deposits of gold. But yeah, let me just see if I can read this bit that relates. I'll read from this update. It says the sun has a birth date and a death date, because when you understand how suns are birthed and how they live and how they collapse or die or transform, the time will be shortened and all the planets in the solar system will be drawn into the sun and become this star holocaust, explode and become a collapsed star, and all will be destroyed in 1 hour. So this is relating to if our sun was to explode and no longer be here. It's called hellfire, and all the hell and chaos has broken out in the Bible and Quranic lands because of the children of the devil are there pretending to be the indigenous people, but they're not. They are the cursed Europeans who invaded and immigrated there and took over. They removed the original blacks of those lands. And it's like, must this happen? No, because like when we were upstate in Jazza Abba, Catskill Mountain, New York, when they came, just talking about when these beings came to pick up beings who should have been ready, they were not ready. Then he says, the mark of the cursed seed mixed into your genes, the genetic markers, cause you to hate self and kind, infighting, keeping you under the sixth ether spell of sleep, Leviathan. And this plan by ETs, extraterrestrials, based on the number 24. This is the bit that I want you to pay close attention to. Once this planet was repaired after the crash, before the crash, its size was 48,000 miles in circumference on a time plan, and this sun is the light of the heavens and this planet, of this solar system, and its planets and moons. It is 93 million miles from this third planet. Its diameter is 853 million miles. It is 92,760,000 miles from the moon, from this moon, sorry. This moon is 2,160 miles at its equator and 240,000 miles from the planet Earth. The planet Earth is 7,926 miles in diameter and 24,000 miles in circumference. Time is 24 hours in a day. Keep noting the 24, right? Because when we talk about gold and we talk about 24 karat gold, etc., we'll come to that. So time is 24 hours in a day. The equinox is 24,000 years. So the needed resource element, right, which is in the periodic table, is known as element, is AU79 carat. 1/24th part of pure gold. Because, like I said, you can transform gold into even liquid. They call it liquid gold, right? So the gold is referred to as AU79 on the periodic table. So it says a portion of the humanoid genome is 24,000, right? Because different, if you remember, I think, what's the guy's name? There were two guys, Jason D. Watson, and I can't remember the first name of the other guy, but I think his second name is Crick. Is it Justin Crick? But anyway, these are the two guys that deciphered the human genome, and from that point it was easy to see that the main three root races on the planet have specific codes, you know, the ACGT, which make up the, you know, the genome. But anyway, I'm digressing. But anyway, it says a portion of the humanoid genome is 24,000. The end of each cycle of 24,000 years begins anew. So every 24,000 years, it's a new cycle, right? And in the Bible and the Quran, the laws given in 1460 BC, if you look at Exodus 24, verse 12, that expired in the year 2000 AD. So from the year 2000 AD is when this new cycle of 24,000 years started. So we're in the day and time where lies are being exposed, and there's a specific part which I can't find at the moment, but it's talking about why gold is needed now and why it's becoming more scarce and why it's no longer available, because people are now depositing their gold, and that's then transferred into pieces of paper, which now if you try to redeem the gold, it's not going to be available, and over time there won't be any, because they're trying to utilize it, you know, to try and protect the sun cycle and the ozone layer, which is basically going to destroy beings on the planet that are not able to withstand this new cycle, because you're going to need that melanin. And also when you're traveling intergalactically and traveling, gold is part of what you need. And in this master secret called the Mafkuzet, all right, it's called The Secret of Tones and the Mafkuzet or Mafkuzat Elixir of Life. This is this talks about how that you need that element to be able to travel at those types of speeds that we're talking about, where you can actually, using contraction and expansion. Now, these are methods that the master teacher is teaching us in the Master Secrets, how you are able to travel beyond what they call the speed of light, and able to bend time. And when we say these things, people might, you know, the scientists of this world are not as advanced, or they're just catching up, so they don't understand things like quantum entanglement and how you're able to be in more than one place in an instant, because traveling takes a long time, even if you're traveling at the speed of light. And when you're dealing with intergalactical travel, the quickest way is to be able to not move or time warp, or be able to, like, they say the quickest way to reach your destination is in a straight line, but that's not actually the only way, because you can bend time, because time is not linear as you've been taught, right? So time is not like moving forward or moving backwards. It's, you can jump, because it's literally spiraling, and so you can bend 2 points and make 2 points touch, right? So imagine there's a point here and there's a point here, and you're trying to travel from here to here. Yes, that's a straight line, but what if you could just not move at all, but be able to bend those 2 points so that they meet up? So these are the techniques that you know, we used as the ancient ones, and as the new prophets of this new cycle, the new supreme beings that are being awoken. This is the knowledge that Pana Babyanon, Dr. Malachi Z. York, is starting to teach us. So my brother, I know I've gone a long way round, but your question is actually so on point. Yeah, just ask them, show me the gold, where is it? Like we say, show me the money. All right, let's go. Next question. So I hope that's helped, but yes, you're right in your thinking.
If scientists now think multiple universes might exist, could ancient people have already known about different dimensions and called them things like the dual verse or the triverse? Number 3.
Okay, so again, question so great. yes, this is what we're saying, that most of what most people in the West know today is based on lies, and it's not necessarily lies intentionally, but lies in the sense of a lack of knowledge, and a lack of knowledge in not knowing the information prior to 6,000 years ago. And the only beings that have that knowledge are beings that were here throughout the 24,000 cycle previous to this new one. And that's us, as we say, Sabians or Nuapians, and our ancestors, the Panatharu, who birthed many of the other cultures. This is why we're known as ontologists. There's an actual fact called Nuapians ontologist of time, because the sciences that we're now teaching and renewing the information with is information that's been passed to us by way of our DNA programming and encoding, by way of our ancestors who live within us, and we are entangled with them. And now quantum entanglement means that we are them and they are us, and we can communicate in real time with them regardless of distance or time. Because something that we're teaching for people that are awake and are raising their vibration and consciousness is something known as the SMAT circle, which deals with how time, real time, is. And that deals with space, matter, and time, because we know that they work in conjunction. You know, they're inseparable. You know, it's not like when you're taught, when you go to the universe, or shall I say the university, to learn and get a degree, you're not taught things about the universe. And that's what you should really be learning when you go to universities. And you get maybe one degree, like your first degree. And if you're fortunate to do higher education, you may then get a master's degree or a postgraduate degree, and then maybe do a PhD. But we knew as ontologists of time that you cannot just address things in isolation. You know, even when you talk about the liberal sciences, it's like by dividing things up, you don't get a holistic view. So you might learn an aspect, but then the others are missing. So the way our ancestors taught is completion, which is 360 degrees. That's the symbolism that is used to, you know, express completion. But you have to realize that you have the physical world, or what people call the physical world, or the material world, and you have what they call the unseen world. Only unseen to those who don't know it's there. So what you're dealing with is, when you look at the periodic table again, it starts off, or for many years, it started off with 1 being hydrogen, then 2 helium, and going this way to the 99 plus elements of the physical world that has been quantified. All right. So as you add the atoms, you know, hydrogen, obviously you're dealing with hydrogen and or oxygen and hydrogen and oxygen, right? So that's still dealing with elements, and you keep adding more and more atoms as you go along to come from a very light or less dense state to a dense state. And then during the time of the master teacher coming and starting to reveal the things that go beyond what they call hydrogen, scientists started to split the atoms. And then you have, you know, people like CERN who continue to split the atoms. And by doing so, they started to delve beyond the state of hydrogen. All right. So they started to delve into quarks and biaps, you know, biapertures, and dealing with Ziads or Zeelies, and going that way. So there are 99 elements going that way, or E1, E2 to the 9th power of 9, which now scientists are starting to delve into. But the more they subdivide the atoms, the more they realize that they're tampering with space, matter, and time. And it leads to other dimensions. And within those different dimensions exist different beings, different states. And within all of that, it's different levels of ether. All right. So, yes, our ancient ones knew about this knowledge. And now, as you say, when you start to count, although they start with, even when you're looking at time, they start with the lowest denominator being a second, which in itself doesn't make sense if you're saying you have firsts. Because when you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going that way, the one is referred to as a first. The second is referred to as a second. So why is it that when you look at time, you start off with a second and not a first? That's because the beings that came second, or dealing with secondary creation, not prime or the first, they weren't there, so they don't acknowledge the first. But we were here first because everything comes from darkness, no matter how you look at it, whether you're dealing with light, color, people, it goes back to darkness, and darkness existed before light. Hence, in their biblical books, in their scriptures, they say God created the light. So God was in darkness, and that darkness is us, even when you start to go into things like dark matter, dark energy. So these are things that we're now starting to teach and expose, and people that are lighter complexions, they have issues with racism, and so they don't allow themselves, through arrogance and thinking that they know, are trying to teach you about things that existed when they did not exist in the first. And even beyond that, we know that you have moments and instances, right? So there are things that will happen instantaneously, without what you're calling time in a linear fashion. So we're now teaching of those states beyond what was known, because now scientists are starting to talk about ether. We are 9 ether beings, and the adverse to 9 ether is 6 ether. And so you have a situation where, unless you're going to allow yourself to be humble enough to be taught these sciences of Wu-Sabat, right? The Nuwapian scientists that existed way before everyone else came along. Even if you start to look at it in terms of extraterrestrials and beings of higher intelligence, you have to delve into the fact that these supreme beings, known as the Natharu, the 9 ether beings, which they don't really teach you or tell you about. They will speak about the Greys, and they will speak about the Pleiadians or the Taurians or the beings from Andromeda. And they will rarely talk about the black ETs or these Natharu, known as the overseers. That's what we're here to do. We're here to upgrade everyone and to teach you the right knowledge that will lead you to the right wisdom, that will lead you to the right overstanding, that takes you to sound right reasoning, so that you start to access and use more of your brain and deal with actual facts and deal with knowledge, right knowledge, not wrong knowledge, not lies. And this is the era we're living in. So yes, our ancestors have this information, and Parnabab Yanun is one of those ancestors, most know as Dr. Malachi Z. who came teaching us and renewing this information for us with over 1,000 books, many recordings, audio recordings. And now is the time for everyone to wake up, because even as humanity, we have to upgrade so that we can start to join the intergalactic community by way of the actions, not the stupid and dumb things that we do to the planet. So now we're going through that reckoning, which is known as the sun cycle. And you have to start using your intellect or the intel in your genetics, we say intelligence, all right? And look at who on the planet is going the other way of wrong information, lies, divisions, wars, chaos, which are not good vibrations that we need to be in as intelligent beings. All right, let's move on to
Number 3. If light has a speed, does darkness have one too? Or is it just an effect of light moving away? Can shadows or cosmic darkness move faster than light without breaking the laws of physics? Thank you very much. We appreciate everything you do.
Okay, so that's the third and final question. Great questions, great questions. I'm glad we're starting to move to a level of questioning that is beyond, the religion. Not to say that people are not at different stages in their development, but we do need to raise the bar with our questions, and this is great. So yes, this is what I started to touch on when I was answering the last question, in that the speed of light has been limited, right? And so you have to ask the question, who put the limitation on the speed of light? We already said poor interpretation by way of the monotheistic religions tells you that God created the light, but they don't tell you who this God is and what form is this God is in. And if light was created, because most of these monotheistic religions, they start off with a creation or something coming or being put into form. And whatever that form is, scientifically, you can break it down to its composition. What is it made from? Because whatever environment you're in will determine the makeup. So if you're dealing with a physical being, especially if you call him a he or him, that's a male that's going to have an arrangement of chromosomes, right? 46, where you get 23 chromosomes from the mother and 23 from, the father. So that will be a physical being in a form. You can't say it doesn't have form, but then say it sits down on a throne or on a chair. That's not logical. Things like that don't make sense. This is why Wu-Sabat is here, to make things make sense. So yes, the speed of light was limited by the beings that are outside of that, who deal with ether. So the ether is what limits the speed of light. This is why no matter how fast light travels, it cannot escape the darkness. And this is information that, as we're raising our consciousness and vibration, we're actually starting to we are teaching this information as the original people on the planet, descendants of the Panataru, or the ancestors who have all this knowledge and sciences. And one of the most prolific writers or beings is the being most known as Tahuti, right? And Tahuti is the being that's been around throughout time, has no what people call mother or father, because when you're breaking the time, that the concept of time that we are used to, you realize that your beginning and ends don't really make sense, because you cannot have an end without knowing the beginning, and you cannot have a beginning when things never die and they just recycle and keep coming around over and over and over again. So this being has always been here, and the master teacher, partner Babyanun, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, is the reincarnation of that being, known by many, many people as Tahuti, known as Thoth. I've already put out a video previously that covers this subject. Hermes Trismegistus. These are different titles or names that were given to this being. So yes, when you start to understand and deal with science, you deal with the different realms, the different planets, and the fact that they have a vibration, and that vibration has something known as nutation. The nutation rate governs its kind of movement and its vibration, because everything vibrates, right? That's movement, that's oscillation, you know. So yes, you're right that our ancestors, the real scientists, have knowledge of these things, and this is why you have to break this that I mentioned about using what they call monatomic gold, or we know it as mafkuzat, or people call it monatomic gold, many different names for it, and that was something that was used to allow you to be able to travel at the, you know, beyond what people call the speed of light. As I said, the technique is known as, you know, warp speed, or contraction and expansion of the bubble. I know some of this might be a little bit complex for some people, but this is why we have these scrolls, the Master Secrets and the Actual Facts, and the Patarak, which deals with our way as, you know, Musbatu, Sabians of Wu-Sabat. And this is new information, this is knowledge that's going to take you to the higher consciousness and of this new sun cycle, all right? Because you're being reprogrammed by way of your DNA, by way of the vibrations of the rays of the sun. And if you don't believe what I'm saying in terms of the monotheistic religions, God was actually created, read Revelations 3:14, and it will tell you our ancestors, one of them being Amun, he witnessed the creation of God, because what you're getting is 6,000 year stories, and a lot of those are distorted or fabrications of the actual facts, of the real truth. And now we're here to make the truth clear. So, my brother, you've asked some very good questions, and I hope I've helped you answer them. But of course, you must always build your own library, study. The reason you have to buy the scrolls or get hold of the scrolls is because you need to build your own library and then pass that knowledge. It's not just for yourself, it's to share with your family, for the next generation, to leave, you know, a legacy. And it's not about you just accumulating knowledge and you've got the knowledge and then it leaves with you when you cross over. Although we can still tap into you, as we say, by way of, you know, as I said before, quantum entanglement, or even what we call epigenetics. These are all sciences that scientists that never used to accept that there's life after death, or different states or different realms, now are starting to get into, by things like epigenetics, things like quantum entanglement, things like ether, you know, which is what we've been teaching and are still teaching and making clear for everyone. So now people have to reckon with that, because these old books, old lies, old stories, misinformation by way of a lack of knowledge are now, they've expired as of the year 2000, you see. So if you look at these religious books, as they were trying and attempting to give you information that they didn't know the secrets of. And just like when you go and buy grocery or any food from the store, it has an expiration date, right? So these books expired in the year 2000 AD. So anything, if you're still relating or trying to make sense of nonsense that has expired for 25 years, meaning that we're in 2025 now, and all of them expired in the year 2000. So can you imagine buying food and leaving it in your fridge for 25 years? It will rot and it will basically be useless to you. So this is what you have to think about when you're trying to live by these old dead books, and everyone in those books are dead, and they deal with, and when you say dead, right, because we already said that energy cannot be destroyed, But what we're saying is energy that is not alive is dead. And so you're in a situation where you're trying to live by stories of dead people in dead books that feed these negative, disagreeable six ether forces that need to survive by pulling on your energy or the living. So the moon reflects off the sun's energy. And you look at these religions, they're all based around 6,000 years, which was during the moon cycle. You see, so we're at a time where we're back into the sun cycle. We're back into the living. We're back into a time where it's dealing with, being vibrant, being alive, not dealing with, necromancy, which is the worship of the dead. And when you delve into these religions, you see that they're worshiping dead spirits, dead people that need to subsist off of the nine ether energy. I'm going to leave it there, but I hope that's answered your question, my brother. And yes, remember, anyone else out there, if you have questions you would like us to address for you, film yourself. You can just use your cell phone. We say mobile phone in the UK, but film yourself asking your 3 questions and then upload them to osmvision.wetransfer.com. That's osmvision.wetransfer.com. It should be in the comments anyway. All right, until the next time, I'm Sir Ken from OSM Vision. Ask us anything. Until the next time, Wadu.